Welcome to this week's Parsha Shiur, Parsha's Sisa. I hope everyone had a wonderful Purim. It's a slightly shorter week and therefore a slightly shorter Shiur, but some very wonderful ideas nonetheless. One of the features of Parsha's Sisa is the structure, the setup of the Parsha. It's very long Rishon, a very long Sheni, and very short subsequent Parshios. We've dealt with it in the past, but it's an opportunity to share one wonderful story. Why indeed is it set up in this way? So the idea that I heard originally from someone called Rabbi in the name of Rav Nosson Ordman is a very beautiful idea, and that is that getting an aliyah on Parsha's Sisa is a little bit awkward, because the central theme of Parsha's Sisa is, of course, the Egel HaZahav. So most people would get an aliyah, any Yisrael would go up there, would feel a little bit uncomfortable. My ancestors perhaps were involved in the Chet of the Egel. The Kohen also, Aaron HaKohen, was in some way associated with it. The only person who feels comfortable not to be embarrassed, if you like, to get called up for the Parsha of Egel HaZahav is, of course, the Levi. Mila Shem Elaich. Shevet Levi did not sin whatsoever. Therefore, in order to call up the Levi, because we don't want to embarrass anyone, in order to call up the Levi for the whole Parsha of Egel HaZahav, we have to structure it in a way to get there, to have a very long Rishon until you get to the story of the Egel HaZahav, and then you call up the Levi, the long Parsha dealing with the Chet of the Egel HaZahav, and then the rest of the Seder is broken up into very small parts. It shows the sensitivity of Chazal when they were breaking up the Seder to protect even people. So many hundreds of years later, centuries later, we don't want to embarrass anybody. So an opportunity to share with you a remarkable story I heard quite recently. There was a famous Rosh Hashiva called Rabbi Genechovsky. Rabbi Genechovsky was the Chibina Rosh Hashiva. He died only about, 10 to 15 years ago. It was 2012. He was a phenomenal Talmid Chacham, one of the outstanding Rosh Hashiva of recent times. And he had the practice of having a chavrusa on Friday night after the meal. He would learn with one of the young men in one of the kolelim. And after the meal, the Kol Junger Man would come to his house and they would learn together. One time, this Kol Junger Man did something which was very out of character. He was absent-minded and he just came along, and by mistake, instead of knocking on the door Friday night, Leil Shabbos, he rang the doorbell. And he was mortified. But he couldn't, he just sort of froze on the spot. A little while later, the door opened, and it was the Rosh Hashiva wearing his pajamas and dressing gown. And he says, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I forgot you were coming. Please come inside, give me a few minutes, I'm going to get dressed again," and all that. He got dressed, and then they learned as normal. Only after he died did the family reveal to this Kol Junger Man what actually had happened. He heard the ring on the doorbell, and he realized that it was a mistake, of course, and if he would answer the door normally, the young man would feel mortified. So he quickly ran upstairs, put his pajamas and dressing gown on, came downstairs feigning, if you like, to have gone to bed and forgotten. And then the guy felt it was absolutely fine. He just came back and he opened the door, and the young man came in, and he didn't really sort of remember exactly if he rang, knocked on the door, and they sat down to learn, but he wanted to spare him the embarrassment. That is really the mark of some of the giants of our time. Anyway, that's just an intro story. Now, what I would like to share with you in today's Shiur are some insights from the Vilna Gaon. The Gaon didn't write, he wrote lots, but most of it was, a lot of the Torah that we have from the Gaon are written from others, from Talmidim and Mipi HaShmua. And this is a good example of Pninim Mishulchan Hagra, stories and ideas that have been collected in the name of the Vilna Gaon. So we've got three fabulous ideas from Parsha's Sisa at the very beginning. The beginning of the Parsha involves a census. Everyone gives the Machatzis HaShekel. And I'd like to share with you three ideas, all from the Pninim Mishulchan Hagra in the name of the Vilna Gaon. So the first one is from the very first pasuk of the Seder. Sisa es reish b'nei Yisrael lefkudehem. When you count the Jewish people according to their number, v'nosnu ish kofer nafshu l'Hashem ifkodesom. Each person is going to give the Machatzis HaShekel. Now, says the Gaon, Tevas v'nosnu taima b'kadma v'azla. Often the Gaon notes what the trop, what the notes, the musical notes for the Golker is on some of the words, and it has a lot of significance. So v'nosnu is a kadma v'azla. A famous note. V'nosnu v'nira What is that teaching us? To bol rameis al maimah chazal b'Masechah Shabbos. Kadma va'azla is alluding to the fact that there's a maimah chazal in Gemara Shabbos Kuf Nun Aleph on a base. The following story: Amar Reb Chia l'Dveisehu. Reb Chia said to his wife, Ki osi anya. When a poor person comes knocking on the door, agdimile rifta. Make sure you go and give him some bread. Ki heichi de lekadmu levonecha. That the people, other people will come and give your children as well when they come knocking on the doors. So she wasn't very pleased with that. Amrulei melit kolaitis lo. You're cursing me that our children are going to have to go around begging for bread on people's doors. Amalah. So he said to Reb Chia said to his wife, that's the reality of life. Galgal hu shechayze ba'ilam. The financial success or lack of with people is just a wheel that goes round. And sometimes you're on top and sometimes you're not. V'hinei tevas v'nosnu nikras lifnim v'la'ocher. Now we know v'nosnu is a palindrome. It can be read forwards and backwards. Vav nun sof nun vav. Ki gam hanoisin pa'omim yistorach she'yidnu lo. Because sometimes the giver has to receive. That's alluded to in the word v'nosnu. It's a palindrome. Oilevonov, either you or your children. He then has a ha'ara in the sefer, which I've got over here. Prat zeh shetevas v'nosnu. This detail, this idea that v'nosnu nikrus gam lemafreya is read backwards and forwards, i.e. as a palindrome. Niska kvar b'balaturim kan. The Balaturim mentions it. Avol b'mashmois acheres with a different insight. Lo melecha. He says the following. The Balaturim says to teach us, Kol mashe odom noisim nistaka yuchse elav. Whatever a person gives to charity will come back to him. He will never lose out from giving tzedakah. And that's tried and tested. The Pasuk says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling us through the Navi, test me. With all other mitzvahs, you can't test HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You can't say, if I keep Shabbos, I'm going to do this, or if I put on tefillin, then this, you can't. But when it comes to tzedakah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, test me. You will never lose out by giving tzedakah, and therefore, v'nosnu is a palindrome to teach me what you give, you get back. That's how the Balaturim understands it. But the Gon takes a slightly different view, that he explains a different insight, and that is Kodma v'Ozla, that he quickly get up and give the bread to this Oni, that it should be a Galgal HaChoyze La'olam, that when the wheel goes round, and sadly your children have to go knocking on the doors, they'll also come quickly and give to them. Zeu she'rams lon Torah, and that's alluded to by the Torah in this pasuk, Batam kadma v'azla in the trop. Hainu, how so? Agdimu rifta la'anya. Quickly go and give bread to this oni, ki heichi de lekadme levonecha, that they will come also quickly to your children. Kadma v'azla, get up and go. That's what it means, kadma v'azla. Lochein ato hakdem v'ten loi. Get up and give to this oni, v'yelech lefonecha sitkecha, that your tzedakah will go in front of you, b'terem yisef agalgal bonecha, before the wheel will sort of turn round on your children. So that's why the V'nosnu has a kadma va'azla. Okay, now next question. Why half a shekel? So this is the next idea of the Gon on the next pasuk. The pasuk says, Ze yitnu kol ha'ovel ha'pekudim machatzis ha'shekel. Then every person gives a machas ha'shekel. Says the Pninim Shulchan Aruch, Hikshu kol ha'mefarshim. All the mefarshim ask the following question: Lo motziva Kodesh Baruch Hu litin machatzis ha'shekel v'lo shekel shalem. Why half a shekel? Why not a full shekel? Or any other coin which is complete. Why are we giving halves? Is HaKadosh Baruch Hu going to use sort of measures which lack? On the contrary, we see that the Torah is makbid on something which is deficient, which is short. For example, the Mizbeach is chipped. Or kais puguma, if you've got a kais which is pogum, which is deficient in some way. V'chol divrei hapachas, and anything which is diminished, posel ligvaya is considered a blemish for in Shamayim. V'kan bo ha-mitzvah dafka litin hamachzas, and yet here we're giving half a shekel. Why? V'chol echod posel if you die toy v'nosen tam l'shvach. And each person, a very poetic way of writing it, and each one gives an interpretation to answer, to address this question, and gives nosen tam l'shvach, which is a borrowed term. It's hilchos issa v'heta, that something instills a taste, which is a positive taste, nosen tam l'shvach. But here he's using it as a sort of coining a phrase that everyone gives their own lovely interpretation to answer this question. V'hagon hagodol meir v'Rebbe harav Eliyahu zatzal. But the author is writing, I heard from my Rebbe, the Vilna Gaon, Pirush lefidarka karoilo. An explanation in his normal style. V'omar, shebetevas machatzis yesh bo hei oisios. The word machatzis has 5 letters. Mem, ches, tzadi, yud, tov. For oisios, sheberosh hateva v'soif hateva hein meis. Now, think if you look at the sheet, you'll see it more clearly. But if you spell out the word machatzis, the first letter and the last letter spell the words meis. V'haim sois hein chai. And then the next two, machatzis, so it's ches, and then the fourth letter is yud. Spell the word chai. V'tzadi be'emtza. What's that? What's the allusion? What's the hint? Lirmois shat tzedakah mekareves es hachai. That tzedakah alluded, hinted to, or referred to by the tzadi is mekareves the chai. It brings life. Or merachekes es hames. The tzadi, which is in the middle of this letter, of this word, machatzis, brings together the ches and the yud, life, and it distances the mem and the sof, the outer letters, which of course refers to death. Because the letters ches and yud, chai, life, are connected to the tzadi, shehid tzedakah, which is referring to tzedakah, and it distances the letters mem and sof. Indeed, Shlomo HaMelech says exactly that. Eitz chaim hi lemachazikim ba v'somchei hamusha. It's an Eitz Chaim. Torah is a tree of life, lemachazikim ba v'somchei hamushar. That it's a tree of life for those who grab onto it. Or tzedakah, fulfilling these mitzvahs, is a means of chaim, of chiyus. Keep a mitzvahs hatzedakah machazikim yedei lom de Torah. By giving tzedakah, you're being machazik, you're strengthening the hands of those who learn Torah for garmim lekar v'sachaim, and that brings life, vitality into the world. Very beautiful. Okay, so that's why we dafka say machatzis hashekel to teach us this lesson, that you've got the tzedakah which is mekarev the chai and distances the mace. Okay, now one final idea from the Vilna Gaon. The pasuk then carries on and says, "He'oshel lo yarbe v'hadal lo yamit," that the rich person can't give more than half a shekel. V'hadal lo yamit, and there were 3 collections, and in this particular collection, everyone's got to give half a shekel. In other collections, they can give more, but in this one, they've got to give half. He'oshel lo yarbe v'hadal lo yamit b'machatzis hashekel. Says the Gaon. Haneginas al tevas he'oshel lo yarbe. Again, we're going on the neginas, the trop, the musical notes that are attached to every letter, every word. He'oshel lo yarbe. So what are the notes on the words lo yarbe? He'oshel lo yarbe is a munach revi'i. That's how you learn it. Munach revi'i. V'yesh leva'eh t'ba l'ramez al mamorim. Why is it a munach revi'i? Amazing. Says the Gaon, it's alluding to the following statement of Chazal, that hamavazveiz al yevazveiz yosem yechomish. The Gemara in Ksubas Tav Vov tells us that if you have money, you want to give lots of tzedakah. Well, there is actually an upper limit as well. You should give Maisa, a 10th, and those who want to give a 5th, 20%, then that's wonderful. But you shouldn't give more than that. And that's a whole share in its own right, but you're not allowed to give Al Yevazvez Yosem Yechem. You shouldn't give more than a 5th. V'zehu munach revi. That's alluded to by the notes on the words He'oshe lo yarbe. How so? Ritzon the loyma. Ta'af He'oshe, even a wealthy person, lo yarbe Yosem Yechamishus, he shouldn't give more than a 5th. Rak dalet chalokim, he should give 4 portions. He should only a quarter. He should keep 4 portions for himself. Yehemunach la'atzmai v'chelik chamishi yevazvez, and then give a 5th. So you want to be generous. You got $100,000, so give away $20,000, but not more. Why? Because munach revi, the 4 chalokim, the $80,000, the 4 portions you keep with you. V'chelek chamishi yevazvez, and therefore that's alluded to in the trop of the words he'oshel lo yarbe munach revi'i. Keep 4 portions for you, and the 5th one give away. Okay, one final idea, and that is this week's Sedra. This week's Sedra, if you think about it, is an amalgam of 4 different themes going on. We are post Purim. We're marching towards Pesach. It's Parshas Sisa, and it's also Parshas Parsha. And there is a common denominator between all 4. We've spoken about it in the past, in previous Shiurim, but there's just one story, one idea that I'd like to share with you. What is the common denominator of all these 4? The common denominator of Sisa, of Parshas Parsha, of Purim, and Pesach is Emunah. Well, how so? Well, Sisa is, of course, the central theme and story of Parshas Kisisa is Egel HaZahav, where you saw a lack of emunah by those who participated. Parshas Parah, of course, deals with Zois Chukas HaTorah, with the quintessential chok of the Torah. You need emunah for that, the Parah Aduma. Purim is all about emunah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is sort of showing us that the philosophy of Amalek, of Mikra, of chance, is wrong, and therefore you see from the story of the Megillah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu orchestrating events from on high. And lastly, Pesach, the whole focus of the Yontov is to imbue us with emunah, eating matzah, Seder night, telling the story. So emunah is the common denominator of these four stages in life: Kisisa, Parshas Parah, Purim, and Pesach. Let me just read to you just something I came across, which I think highlights this point. What does that mean, emunah? Emunah, it means living with emunah. Let me read to you something which I came across and filed it away, and I'd like to share with you. This was written in November 2016, so nearly 10 years ago. I'll read it to you. Every once in a while, there is a story published about those among us who live up to the Torah's mandate to be a light unto the nations. It has happened more than once in recent times, where a religious Jew showed what Jewish ethics are really all about. It happened again. Only this time the Kiddush Hashem resulted in an immediate, tangible result. A result that was an unintended consequence of his actions, which makes the Kiddush Hashem even greater, since there was no ulterior motive for what this person, Sol Verdiger, did. He did it because it was the right thing to do, not only for any personal or communal gain. And the story by Rabbi David Sachs has apparently gone viral on social media, and this is the story. This past weekend, writes Rabbi David Sachs, I heard an amazing story. Mr. Sol Verdiger, the CEO of Outer Stuff, a company that produces sports apparel, received a phone call from Mr. Oh Jun, the South Korean UN ambassador, asking to meet him for lunch at a kosher restaurant in Manhattan. Although Sol did not know the purpose of the meeting, he agreed to meet with Mr. Jun. When they met, Mr. Jun told him the following: I have always heard negative stereotypes about Jews in Israel, and I took it at face value. Then my daughter took an internship working on design in your company. Throughout the year, she has been telling me how wonderful it is to work at your company. Mr. Jun continued, there are 4 areas which stood out and impressed my daughter. 1. Every day at 1:30 p.m., no matter what was going on at the office, all the men, including them from neighboring offices, retreated into a room to pray with sincerity and calm. 2. Every Friday the office shuts down early in the afternoon in preparation for your holy Sabbath and is closed on the Sabbath. This includes all workers, no matter which faith or religion they maintain. 3. My daughter observed that each petitioner for charity, and there were many, were treated with respect and left with a check in hand. 4. My daughter was treated with the utmost respect and dignity. Because of the amazing experience and lessons the company taught his daughter, Mr. Jun took out his checkbook and was ready to write a check returning all his daughter's earnings. Mr. Verdiger wouldn't hear of it. Your daughter worked and earned her salary and rightfully deserves her pay. I will not accept any remuneration. Then the ambassador relayed the most amazing thing. As you know, I have voting privileges at the UN. Because of my renewed appreciation of the Jewish people, I abstained from voting on resolutions against Israel on 3 occasions. At one resolution, I was the 9th vote needed to pass the motion. Resolution against Israel, and because I abstained, it did not pass. Mr. Verdiger told me that no one at the office had any idea that this girl was the daughter of an ambassador, and no one ever imagined what type of impact their typical conduct at work had on her, or how this impacted the votes against Israel. Mr. Verdiger happened to be the chairman of the Board of Trustees of Agudas Yisrael of America, which speaks highly of their leadership, if he is typical of them. This story, a remarkable story. It's a beautiful story, but the beautiful thing is that really the 4 points that this ambassador pointed out to Mr. Verdiger are just Jews living with emunah. They stop for mincha every day. They close early for Shabbos to go home to get ready and prepare in time for Shabbos. They give tzedakah. They treat people with respect and dignity. That's called living with emunah. And that really is the confluence of the 4 points that I mentioned, Kisisa, Parshas Parah, and Purim and Pesach. the central common denominator is emunah, and living with that emunah can have some very far-reaching effects. Let me just summarize what we've said today in a slightly shorter Parsha Shiur, Parsha's Sisa. Number one, something which is spoken about in the past, that beautiful idea of why the Parsha is split in this unusual way, a very long Rishon and Sheni, and very short subsequent Parshas. The idea of sensitivity, that we have to call up the Levi, the one person who will not be embarrassed, and therefore we have to orchestrate that. We have to have a long Rishon, a long Sheni, and shorter subsequent Parshas, and then the story of Avram Genachovsky on the Friday night Chavrusa. Then we had 3 insights of Stocker from the Vilna Gaon. Why does it say V'nosnu ish koife? V'nosnu is kadma va'azla, and the idea is referring to the Gemara, alluding to the Gemara in Shabbos on Kufnan Aleph, that Reb Chia said to his wife that make sure you get up and go, kadma va'azla, get up and go and give the oni quickly, because it's a galgal ha'chayz la'olam that it will come back and that they'll give your children in their time of need. So kadmo va'azla, get up and go quickly, is alluded to in v'nosnu, because v'nosnu means that it's a galgal ha'chayz la'olam, it's going to come back to you. That's the reality of life. The Balaturim has a different pshat. V'nosnu, what you give, you'll get back, etc. Then the second idea of why half a shekel, because it's the word machatzis is illuminating that very beautiful idea that tzadi, Stocker in the middle is makarev chai, is going to sustain chiyus and life, and distances misa, and that's really what Stocker can achieve. That it's tatzel mimoves really. And then the final idea of he'oshelo yarbe is a munach revi. He'oshelo yarbe, even the rich person shouldn't give more than machatz shekel. But why is the trop a munach revi? To allude to this Gemara of hamavazvez alivazvez yosem echomish, that a person should be munach revi, should keep 4 portions for himself, and then give away the 5th portion if he can, to give 20%, 1/5 to tzedakah. And the final idea of emunah, the common denominator between Kisisa, Pashas Parah, Purim, and Pesach, is that of living with emunah, as the episode with Mr. June and Mr. Solverdiger displayed.